Ming.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations, by the way. So I guess you're officially a fifth grade teacher?
I am just graduated, just started my new job. Very excited. Thank you.
Yay! Is it in person or is it virtual?
So I am a virtual, fully remote teacher.
Oh, cool. So are your students also, I guess they're also
Yep.
remote.
Yep. Totally remote school.
Wow, that's so
Very
interesting.
modern.
Yeah. I definitely never experienced that growing up.
Me either.
Do you feel like it eliminates some anxiety or is it equally as stressful?
I think it definitely helps, especially for the students, because they can kind of decide if they want when they want to be on camera and when they don't want to. So it's easier for them. And then for me, it's like I can, as soon as I'm off camera, I'm like, okay, I can breathe and like mentally prepare for the next class.
Yeah. So, I just want to like get into it, but first I want to say like you guys make sure you follow her. I absolutely love her. She's just the most like genuine and like awesome person. You showed up, you brought holy water to my house when I had that crazy experience.
Oh gosh, that was fun.
Yeah, so watch episode 1 because I explained the whole thing. But yeah, thank you for being there.
Anytime.
But yeah, so I just wanted to jump in your whole experience, living with undiagnosed problems, diagnosed problems, but specifically Lyme's disease. Like, I kind of want you to explain it to me like I'm 5. Like, is it literally like you get bit by a tick and then you get it? Like, what happens?
So you can get bit by a tick, by a flea, by a fly. It's everyone thinks it ticks because it's most common, but there's actually a lot of different ways that you can get Lyme. The CDC also now recognizes that it can be passed in utero if the parent has Lyme disease, so you can be born with it as well. So different ways you can get it. There's some speculation on if it can be sexually transmitted too, so that's now being looked into. So a lot of people actually get Lyme without even realizing it because they're like, "Oh, I don't remember being bit by a tick," but then they get really sick. And it can start out as like flu-like symptoms if you're have an acute uh, disease.
Like
But
symptoms? Yeah.
yeah, like it can start out with like aches, pains, headaches, joint pain, especially very, very tired. But sometimes people will get bit and then they will have no symptoms for a long time. And that's where it can get tricky because your body, it'll just kind of stay dormant in your body until usually something very stressful happens or you become sick with a different disease. And then it just kind of like comes into action. And then that's where we see a lot of the more neurological symptoms, brain fog, seizures, migraines, things like that.
Do you think that um can you like start with Lyme's disease and then it like turns into other illnesses too, or do you become more prone to other diseases or
So with Lyme, there's a lot of co-infections that come with it, like Bartonella, which I have, Babesia, aeruginosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Those are other tick-borne diseases that can all come in the same tick bite, or depending on how you got it, insect bite. So that can be tricky to kind of differentiate. There is testing, but all of this testing it's still kind of primitive. They're still developing a lot of these tests, so it can be hard to diagnose any of these diseases. And then there's also with the effect that it takes on your body, it does make you more prone to having, if you have like underlying autoimmune issues. For me, it was fibromyalgia. It can kick all that into play as well.
Mhm. And what was it like when you discovered you had Lyme's? Like what was that experience?
So I had those acute flu-like symptoms back when I think I was about 12, was the first time that I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. And that was like the normal run-of-the-mill fever, pain, tiredness. Took some antibiotics, felt mostly normal, thought everything was fine. Then it was the second time around, this time that I was hit with those neurological symptoms. So I didn't have any of those fever or flu-like symptoms the second time around, which is what kind of has my had my doctors thinking that it was probably that original infection that just stayed dormant in my body, and then after a period of great stress. It kind of reactivated to be neurological because it had been in my body for so many years. So then it really started with migraines, like horrible. I had this awful migraine for it was 17 days straight without break. Yeah. And that was when my like light sensitivity and floaters and seeing all sorts of colors and a lot of vision issues that all kicked in at the same time. And then I also began to lose the ability to work my legs. So they would just randomly give out. I wouldn't be able to move my legs. I wouldn't be able to stand. If I was standing, I would fall to the ground. So it was a much more serious illness this time around.
And how do you feel like the people around you reacted to this? Like, were they concerned? Were they kind of confused? Like, what was it like in as like a group?
I think there was a lot of confusion because it just happened like in seconds. I mean, I literally, like, I remember the moment so clearly. I was getting ready to go to church, and then all of a sudden, it was just like the worst pain in my head. My vision was just changed and never has gone back. And so it was just very sudden. So I think my family was shocked, friends were confused, doctors were confused because I had no really previous. Um, Issues with migraines or things like that. And as a teenager, I was 19. And as a woman, I quickly learned that it's pretty difficult to get healthcare professionals to take young women's issues seriously.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, Personally, I've never dealt with anything as severe as that, but I've definitely had some issues with my ovaries. And I remember I was, I think 18 or 19, and it got to a point where when I was at my time of the month, it was so excruciatingly painful that I felt like I was gonna like scream, I would pass out, like it was too much. And I always felt like bloated and heavy and just weird. And I remember I went to a doctor and this guy comes in, I explained to him, he's like, "Oh, that's normal. You're on your period. Like just, put some heat on it." And then I ended up going to like an emergency room because I was like, I feel like I'm gonna give birth or something. Like this is really bad. And it turns out that I did have like a pretty big cyst and they basically told me, oh, just take more birth control, it'll go away. But like, no, not at all. Like I took birth control for maybe 5 months and I gained weight. I had acne, I had no sex drive. I was like literally insane. I actually think I was kind of insane for a couple months. Have you so I know you have some similar, like, I think PCOS and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So, did you feel like you had a similar experience? Like there's, "Oh, you're just on your period," or.
Very, very similar. Yes, pretty much
Yeah.
CT. You're basically just told to take birth control and ignore it essentially,
Mhm.
which just feels wrong. Like, it doesn't feel right. You don't feel healthy. It doesn't feel like the right way to handle it. It took a lot of kind of really having to educate myself on it to learn how important diet was for it, changing my diet, working exercise in, and just how much lifestyle really plays a role in it. And then also just the challenges of really having to advocate to your doctors because one, it's still a lot of these disease like polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. It's has not been a lot of research done on it. There's still like a lot of like, research happening.
Yeah.
So just even healthcare professionals aren't as like well educated on it as other conditions. So
Yeah,
it,
'cause
it
the
really becomes
answer.
a personal responsibility with some
Yeah.
of these diagnoses.
Yeah, because it used to just be like, "Oh, she's hysterical, go lock her in a room somewhere, send her by the sea."
Yeah,
And now we're like, I've got shit to do. I can't go be
yeah,
locked up by the sea." Like, although honestly, I wouldn't complain if somebody just sent me to live. Right.
yeah. It could be worse.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, like it's scary, it's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's kind of good because you do have to learn more about being healthy.
Mhm.
What's if you can think off the top of your head, what's like one of the most shocking things you've learned about health in general?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay. This one it's not like essentially, well, I guess it is kind of a health tip, but it really hit me in a more like spiritual sense in that I always thought of health as just being physical. I didn't realize how important the mental, emotional, and spiritual, like it all works together. Like if your spiritual health isn't good, then your mental and physical health isn't good. If your physical health isn't good, your mental and spiritual will suffer, and same with mental. Like it all really does work together. And that was kind of like a moment for me. And I think when I realized that and started working on each of those areas in my life, that's when I started to do a little better.
Yeah, and that's really a powerful, like, understanding because it's not just, like, spiritual woo woo whatever, like, actual doctors will tell you this,
Mhm.
like, medical professionals, and it makes me, like, kinda laugh because you think mind, body, soul, and 3 is such a holy number, like Father, Son, Holy Spirit, like, that trinity and that connection, you need one with all the other ones. But speaking of that connection, so I know you and I, we've done Reiki together, and you do some other practices as well. So what has kind of worked for you? Do you think it makes a difference? Like, what's your personal take?
So I practice both Reiki, thanks to you, and Qigong. I love them both. I'll do some Tai Chi as well. I love all of that. I find that it really has kind of changed my life. I know like sometimes people want energy healing to be just this like magic instant
Yeah.
fix. That's not really, I mean, it can happen, but that's not always how it goes. And it, for me, I find it's more of like a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
And kind of helps like my entire life, but especially my attitude and just my mindset, being able to work those into my routine during the day. It kind of helps with the anxiety. It helps me manage depression for sure. And it definitely actually really helps with my fatigue. So, all my illnesses, fatigue is like a big
Yeah.
symptom, and it's always like an energy boost, and you just feel good and more motivated to keep fighting.
Yeah. I think it comes from one, just being a little bit more in control because you are kind
Mhm.
of working on yourself or somebody else is helping you work on yourself, mind, body, and soul. And then I think it's also that reminder that, like, I'm not just a physical body. Like, there are all these other elements, divine elements that I can work on and focus on. But it is interesting,
Absolutely.
though, like, I do believe that, your stress, your pain, your trauma contributes a lot to your physical health. But then I also know that some things are purely physical, right? Like if your arm gets chopped off,
Yeah.
you can't just like
Right.
peace love.
Exactly. It's
I mean,
really
maybe
everything has
God
its
really
place
is
and
like,
yep.
yeah. But I mean, it's really beautiful to see that, like, I mean, I haven't known you that long, probably only a couple of years, but it's just really awesome how you don't let it like just crush you completely. Like you always get back up after you've been struggling. What do you think motivates you the most to get out of bed in the morning? Like just on those days when you just like don't feel good, you got all these symptoms, like what gets you out of bed?
Well, I do try to always have something I'm working towards. It's very easy when you're faced with these, what they say are going to be lifelong conditions, to just want to give up. But like having, like now that I have my classes to teach, I'm like, all right, these kids are depending on me. Like they need me to show up. So that's part of it, trying to show up for my family, my friends, really kind of diving into those roles to the extent that I can. So that's one part. And then the other part really is my faith in God. Just I couldn't keep going if it wasn't for my belief in God. That really is what drives me. Is like I know there's something more. There's somebody watching out. He's got a plan for me. I've been able to watch this plan unfold. All of these kind of what would be negative experiences with my health. There's also been so many great things that have happened because of it. Um, like even just being a teacher, that was never my plan, but the way like things unfolded with my health, I just kind of felt like I was being guided into that role.
Hmm.
Friends that I've made, especially through social media, I mean, I never would have met
Hmm.
any of these people. I never would have like an account like this, and being able to meet people. So I really feel like God is guiding me, and so it helps me see the direction and kind of like I may not know the reason that this is all happening, but there have been good things along the way that show me that it's worth it to keep going.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I also feel like your husband is very supportive. Um,
Extremely.
is there anything like what do you say is the most helpful thing he does for you when you're dealing with the stress or the symptoms or what have you?
So, I mean, I always feel like I'm the luckiest girl in the world because he's amazing and has supported me every single day. He always shows up. And I think if I had to pick, the most important thing is really just listening. Like it ends up being a lot of the same events and complaints over and over and over again because I'm dealing with the same things that they just keep coming every time we think, oh, I'm doing a little better, and then you get a setback. But he's just listens to every crying session, complaint, every problem, every setback. He's just there, and he's just kind of that rock to support
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, and I know that you have a lot of allergies too. A lot of things you're allergic to, and whenever I'm with you guys, he's very much like aware of that, and he like makes sure that you avoid those things, he avoids those things. If you don't mind, could I like list some things and see if you're allergic to them?
Yeah.
So, are you allergic to alcohol?
Yes.
So,
Um,
how did you find out you're allergic to alcohol?
Pretty much kind of trial and error that I would have it and I would react. And so alcohol, I'm allergic in two ways. One is it's kind of a histamine activator. So people with histamine issues kind of avoid alcohol because they'll have allergic reactions to it. And then I also have a very bad nickel allergy. And a lot of the foods that are used to make alcohol and the fermentation process, it really they tends to be high in nickel. So I avoid it for that reason too.
Oh, I actually didn't know that about the nickel. I don't okay, I'm not like super educated on this, but I almost feel like everyone is a little bit allergic to alcohol, just not maybe as acutely as you are. Because I've noticed like if somebody drinks, like for instance, their cheeks get like extra rosy and
Mhm.
like have you ever heard of gin blossoms?
No.
So I actually learned about this because I used to work at the liquor store, and apparently gin blossoms. Like if somebody's been drinking liquor for like a long time and like very often, they actually develop like red like blossoms all over
Really?
their nose, and they're called gin blossoms. So I feel like it's really like a long term illness that just kind of like keeps resurfacing. Um, so let's see what else. Are you allergic to perfumes?
Oh, very. Hmm.
And so do you know, like, what about these perfumes, like, what triggers it? Do you know?
And that one I'm not sure because I'm allergic to all fragrances. And I don't really know why. It's just kind of the chemicals that are used in them. But then even some of the natural things too, I can be allergic to as well. It's just kind of the natural part of the plant that gives off the fragrance. For some reason I'm allergic to it.
Yeah, yeah, and
Definitely
that's
worth it's
another thing.
artificial though.
Yeah, and that's what I think too is, like, artificial, like, perfumes and smells with all that like, Febreze, for instance,
Oh god.
and, like, laundry detergent smells.
Yeah.
I think everyone is, like, a little bit allergic
Yeah.
to it.
Oh, I agree. They're just terrible for your hormones. And
Yeah,
then two, I mean, a lot of people get migraines or have reactions to them, even if they have no other health issues.
yeah.
Fragrances they can be really rough.
And, like, I know so I'm not gonna go down a whole laundry list, but I know you have a lot of allergens, and I
Mhm.
almost feel like it's a blessing because it's like you already know what's toxic, and you're like your
Mhm.
body's like, "Girl, don't even touch it." Whereas us, we just, like, slowly keep poisoning ourselves.
No, and I say that all the time. I'm like, thank God kind of that I have these things because I was using them a lot or like have using them all the time. And then now that I can't have them, I'm like, okay, well, it's really not so bad because some of these things I would be choosing now not to use anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, are you allergic to, like, animals?
No, fortunately, I'm good with animals.
See, animals are good. You're not allergic to the good things.
Yeah. I couldn't not be around animals. Too much of an animal lover.
I know. Oh my gosh. I'm also sorry, I know your dog passed kinda recently.
Yeah.
Girl, my dog died back in October, and, like, that was the first time a pet that I've known for, like, 16 years died. Like, that was the first time I went through that. That is the saddest,
It's
like,
heartbreaking.
oh my gosh. It's
Mhm.
I don't wanna say it's worse than a human dying, but it's really up there because
It's
your dog
really
can't be like, "Hey, I'm gonna miss you," or "I love you," or, like, you know what I mean? They can't tell you how they feel.
Mhm.
Ugh.
But it's such like an unconditional love relationship that, yeah, it really, oh my gosh, it just tears you up.
Yeah, it's like pure unconditional. You're right, pure unconditional love, like literally. But not to take it down that sad like road. But yeah, there's just so much we could talk about. I feel like with this topic. Is there anything you feel like you miss out on?
I would say the social part of this is tough because it's very random. You can make plans with friends and then I'll wake up or even like I'll be fine in the morning and then by the time it's time to go out, the symptoms will be really bad and be like have to cancel. It can be very hard to keep friendships up that way. And I always feel like I'm missing out on stuff. And it can also be really hard to relate to people my age while dealing with things like this because, like people in their 20s, they're going out drinking and I can't partake in any of that. And so you just feel sort of different.
Hmm. But then again, that's also a blessing in disguise. Like nothing good ever happens when you're out drinking.
Yeah, no, and honestly, like I even if I could drink alcohol, I'm just not into it at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. So that's interesting that you said that it could possibly Lyme's disease could actually be like passed on to
Mhm.
children. Like, are you worried about that? Like if you do choose to have kids?
Yes, very worried about that. That is, it's something that you just kind of have to consider. That I know, at this point, I know a lot of people with Lyme disease. So we have quite a big community, unfortunately. But it's something that a lot of women, especially, are trying to decide if they really want to actually have biological children because of the risk. And what we have seen is that the disease is even worse symptom wise for the people who get it from utero than if they were to get it from a tick bite after they were born. Because that's kind of one of the arguments that a lot of people make is like, oh, they could just, as easily be born and then the next day get bit by a tick. But it's really not a comparison because there's a more of a risk of neurological symptoms from utero.
Well, do
So
they have Oh, sorry, go ahead.
so it's just kind of it's a difficult decision to have to make because it is something that like I feel as potentially a mother that I wouldn't want to put my child in that position if I could avoid it.
Well, do they have any statistics on like how likely the child is to have it?
So at this point, not that I know of, although I could be wrong. There could be something out at this point. There's a lot of research being done, which is good, but there we just don't know enough yet. Kind of see as the years go on.
Yeah, that's so tough because like of course part of me is like you should always try anyways because you never know. But then I also really understand just like the heartbreak of dealing with something like that. Like um my grandmother, so my uncle was born with spina bifida, so he was like completely paralyzed like his whole life. He always needed assistance. I believe he died when he was about like maybe 2023, and just his whole life was such a struggle. And like to this day, anytime my granny started drinking a little bit, she's like, I'm Miss Daryl, and this was like,
Oh,
so long ago, like 40 years ago at this point. And it's really sad. Like I feel like that type of stuff is you never heal from something like that. So it's definitely you're in a tough spot with that. But of course, there's always other options, and you also never know. You could have a
definitely.
perfectly
Yeah.
healthy
Yep. There's for as many stories as there are of my kid got it, there's just as many of my kids are perfectly healthy, they're teenagers, they're doing great, never had it. So yeah,
yeah,
you just don't know. So just kind of see where life leads and what God blesses us with.
yeah. And so, excuse me. Speaking of God, so you are Catholic, right?
I am.
Would you say you're like hardcore Catholic, or would you say you're kind of like a medium Catholic?
I guess I'll have to go with hardcore.
Hardcore. All right, yeah. So like you kind of know me. I'm like, I don't know. I guess I consider myself spiritual. But the
Hmm.
reason I'm bringing this up is I was talking to somebody earlier, and I do occasionally go to church. And I guess by default, like I'm also Catholic, but I'm not necessarily like hardcore, like agree with everything. And I kind of have my own kind of beliefs and
Hmm.
feelings. So I say I'm spiritual. But somebody earlier was like, "Oh, spirituality is like a new age term. Like it doesn't really mean anything. Like blah blah." And I was kind of like, because she was saying basically you're either religious or you're not.
Yeah,
What do you think about that? Do you think you're either religious or you're not, or do you think there's some gray area? Like, what do you think?
no, I mean, I think there are people who are religious and haven't just like connected the spiritual side of it. I think there's definitely people who are spiritual that aren't religious, but I mean, at least for myself, I'm like, I feel like they just go together. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't imagine following my religion if I didn't see the spiritual connection or point
yeah,
to it.
yeah. I think also the problem is a lot of people have issues with the people in church,
Yeah.
and
And
that's
I
the point.
where I'm like, you gotta your religion is it's for you. It's your relationship to your
Yeah,
God. So
yeah,
I mean, I kind of separate a lot of that and I'm really just focused on okay, this is the information that God has given me. This is what I'm following. It's between me and him and everything else is just kind of extra, take it or leave it.
yeah. That's kind of how I feel too. Just because I see like the church as like kind of a man-made type deal,
Mhm.
and that's my only issue with it. But the basis, like the Bible, I got no issue with the Bible. You know what I mean? I got no issue with, like, I think Jesus is like awesome. Like we're all cool. But I just don't think I need some guy telling me like, oh, Jesus said this, and you like I'll figure that out on my own. And I'll build my own relationship. That's kind of my thing with it.
Yeah, I think, and choosing your church, I think is so important because there's definitely churches I've been to that I'm like, this is doing nothing for my spiritual growth. And then there's other priests that I have like listened to every week and I'm like, wow, you are teaching me so much. So I
Yeah.
think it's important to kind of find your tribe, so to speak, with your religious community. But yeah, no, I'm more of a like, I'll open up any page in the Bible and I can't argue it. I'm like, this makes sense to me. So that's kind of how I feel about it. I think the Catholic, for me, the scripture and the doctrine, I connect most to it. But really, I can't say when I say I'm hardcore Catholic, I can't say that I am not open to other points of view because I definitely am. And kind of the separation of politics and religion, like to me, I keep it separate. But
Mhm.
really, I just care about like my personal relationship with God and Jesus.
Yeah. And I think that's most important because some people too are like, I'm Catholic or I'm Jewish or I'm this, but they really like they don't really give a shit. They don't. That's just what they're told that they are. They don't actually have any connection, which is sad. I'm not making fun of anybody. I think that's actually sad.
But just room to grow.
True, true. Yeah. And I do feel like not always, but I think sometimes God just reaches everybody at a different time in their life in a different way. Like maybe you're not even
Mhm.
religious till 2 days before you die. I don't
Right.
know. That's just the funny thing about it. And that's why I try not to like rush anything in my life or like control the timing. So like, you know what? It'll happen. We're good. We're chilling.
I totally agree.
So going back to dealing with the chronic illness, but you also focus a lot on health, right?
Mhm.
So what would you say like is your ultimate goal with your page? Like I know you've kind of built this community or become a part of a bigger community. Is it just to spread like information or what's your goal with it?
Well, I number one is kind of advocacy. There's a lot, especially a lot of these conditions that I happen to have are not very well known, and I think it is important to spread the word and educate people because the more awareness we have, the more funding goes into research, and that's what's most important. Discovering new treatments because a lot of these illnesses are considered lifelong or incurable, which I really don't believe to be the case. I think we just need more information on it. So advocacy is number one. But number two is also to connect with the community. It's been great for me to get to meet with so many people who understand and kind of can share our stories and support each other. And then finally, just to help in any way I can. So I have tried to put a emphasis on fitness on my page because I think that that's an area where a lot of people with illnesses or disabilities struggle. There's not that much room or I guess voices in the fitness community for people who can't perform exercises normally. And so it's kind of, I think a lot of people, when they're hit with an illness, they just feel like they can't. It's because if you can't exercise how you used to, like going all out, then you just feel like their only other option is to do nothing, which isn't the case. Exercise is always important, no matter what condition or state you're in. So trying to share the little things that I've been able to add in, and workouts, there's all kinds of accommodations you can make
Yeah.
to keep moving.
And it's really great that you're doing this. I think it's really inspiring. Like even for me, even though I can't really relate with everything, like just seeing like, well, if she got out of bed this morning and like she's doing it, like I can at least do like a couple push-ups or something. You know what I mean? Because you just have way more stress and way more like going on than most people. But speaking of which, like in terms of your friends or your family, like if you were to tell someone how to be a good friend or understand what you're going through, like how can people better support you, or how would you prefer to be? I don't know, do you know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, because I think that's something that a lot of people, like at least, have expressed in the community is they don't feel supported, because they just don't feel like their friends or family get it, and it's okay to not get it. I think that's kind of the best thing you can say is like, I know I don't understand exactly what you're going through, but like I'm here for you, I support you, and to just keep giving those invites. Just because we turn them down all the time, we still want to be invited, and then on that off chance that we're able to go, then it's great because we get to spend time with you. So just let us know you're there to listen, and then try to include us the best you can. It's
Yeah, and I
appreciated.
agree with that. Just as somebody who prefers to stay home all the time, I still expect to be invited.
Right? Everyone wants to be invited. Everyone wants to know
Yeah.
you're thinking about them.
Yeah. And it's funny too that you mentioned like still being invited. I remember back when I lived near you, your husband and I ended up being the only two people that weren't drinking, and we're like eating chips in the corner. I'm like, so how's Mary? He's like, she's good. We're like the two people. I'm like, I wish she was here. Me too.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, it was really funny. But by the way, I know you moved recently to Pennsylvania. How do you like it?
Oh, I love it. I love we're out in a nice rural community. It's nice to be in a slower moving, slower pace. Really enjoying it. And still kind of close to friends and family, so it's been good.
Yeah, so you definitely noticed like a slower pace from New Jersey to Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah. Oh,
It's like the lower you go, the slower it gets. So I'm a whole state below you, so I'm even slower. Which is fine until I go to like a restaurant or like a drive-through and
like,
I'm sitting there
all
for like
right. I know, yeah. You can't really take the Jersey out of you once you've experienced it, but
yeah.
it's nice to like, I don't know, it just feels less stressful.
You know, I don't know about the food where you live, but I miss like just going to get like a bagel or a sub that's like actually made there.
So I'm lucky that we're like right on the border because the food's still pretty good. But yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. Like when I lived in New Hampshire for like while I was in school for that semester, oh my God, the bagels were horrible. Horrible. Couldn't take
I don't
it.
even think
Pizza, terrible.
I think most places just get them frozen from somewhere else. But I'm like, where are they getting them?
Right?
Like, where is it coming from? But it's I don't know, it's weird. Actually, one thing too I wanted to ask you, so with like I know you have some food allergens as well, so like are you like a good cook? Like do you like make everything from scratch, or like what do you do?
I've had to learn. I have had to learn. I know, yes, I make everything pretty much from scratch for the most part. I mean, like, oh my gosh, I last year I was into this cheese it. I was like craving on like crazy. So I started making those homemade. I just made homemade Pop Tarts for Christmas so people could have that. I'm like, yeah, it's not always I it's just like when you get those cravings and it's just kind of like, man, I wish I could go to the store and just have something like I'd pull it off the shelf. Can't
Yeah.
do that. So I make little exceptions from my like trying to eat healthy. I'm like, all right, if I want something, I'll put the effort in and make it from scratch every once in a while to at least like have some sense of normalcy.
Yeah, but I feel like you make it with love, you know?
Yeah.
But actually that's a really good content idea. Like for people who also have the same allergies being like, "Hey, like you can make it this way." Like that's a really good idea.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we have like a little nickel like Facebook group for people with our allergies and we're always like sharing recipes and stuff. It's really fun.
Oh, cool. I like that, you know? And that's always like no matter what, like negative thing you're going through, there's always like a bright side, whether
Yeah.
that's like community or literally, I don't even know, but
Yeah,
it's
no,
really,
absolutely. It is. It's funny to have like these little communities, but it's nice. Just everybody supports each other.
yeah. Do you find also that, and we don't have to get into details about this, but do you find also that it's like just the doctor bills are like overwhelming? Like, is it just
Oh
crazy
my God,
expensive?
it's insane. It's insane. I've had to turn down a lot of treatments. I've had to stop seeing a lot of doctors because of how expensive it is. I mean, it's impossible like to not pretty much go into debt over it. I mean, so many people, like I unfortunately know people who, with my illnesses who have lost their homes because of these doctor's bills. It's just, especially Lyme disease. Lyme disease is one of those, you're in the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars for treatment.
Oh my gosh. And it's just so sad because it's like, it's not like you're going and getting a Chanel bag. Like, you're just trying to live your life, you know,
Exactly.
and you can't
Yeah.
just like,
Like just even
jeez.
just trying to get like 50% better. Like a lot of people, they're like, I know I can't get to 100, but like, let me try to just get somewhat better. And they just can't afford the treatments. I mean, the one that I had been like most hopeful about, the doctor was like, oh, this is going to be perfect for you, but insurance isn't going to cover it. And it's going to cost $40,000 a month. And you're going to need at least 4 months, most likely, of treatment. I'm like, okay, so where am I getting this $120,000 from?
Yeah.
So I had to say, like, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. So two things with that though is one, I think the upside is that leads a lot of people to try like holistic ways of
Mhm.
healing, which is really good. But then two, sometimes I wonder, and I do know that this is the case sometimes, if they're just trying to get a check. You know, they're just trying to sell this medication or sell this
For
procedure.
sure.
And they might not even, I hate to say it, but they might not even really care. Or they're just like, you know, I got a family to feed too. So like let's get the money rolling. And that's
Yeah.
the sad part is, you know, not just because somebody's a doctor doesn't always necessarily mean that they actually care, and that's the saddest part to me.
I
You know?
totally agree. I mean, we know that they get bonuses for pushing certain medications. I mean, they'll that's just kind of known that doctors will admit that themselves. But then it's like, okay, so are you offering me the best treatment, or are you offering me the treatment that you're getting, extra money for?
Yeah.
And so that's something that, especially like with a chronic illness where you often are like supposed to be on a lot of medications or medication for a long time, it makes you really have a lot of questions of, am I really getting the best treatment?
Mhm. If you don't mind me asking, like, how
Mhm.
many medications do you take a day?
So right now, okay, so right now I have switched to being totally holistic for the time being. Yeah, yeah, because I was on years of antibiotics and other medications, and wasn't I wasn't making progress, and it got to the point where I was feeling sicker and sicker. It just I felt terrible. It wasn't, So now I'm fully holistic, which I had been back and forth for a while, but this time I really feel like I've gotten it right and have been doing a little bit better. So right now I'm on supplements, and I take three. I'm starting another one, so four to five of those a day,
Yeah,
which
no,
is
actually,
less than a lot of others.
yeah, no, honestly, I'm really proud of you for that. Because, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think everybody should do whatever is right for them, but I just find 9 times out of 10, the medications hurt people more than help them.
And then, I mean, when you look at where do they get them from, I mean, a lot. It's from plants, it's from nature. So I'm like, I'd rather just take the natural stuff if I
Yeah,
can. In some cases, medication does win out depending on the issue. Like I'm not opposed, but for the most part, I avoid it unless I'm like, okay, I'm really sick and I need this, and it's going to help. But otherwise, yeah, no, I lean more towards the holistic side of things.
yeah. No, I think that's really the best way to go, you know? It's just really sad what I've seen happen to people from side effects, and it's always sad when, like, the side effects are worse than what it's supposed to treat.
Yeah. I mean, from those antibiotics I'm on, like I have gut issues that are going to take a very like years and years and years to actually recover. But I was told, the benefits outweigh the side effects, but it really wasn't really true.
Yeah.
I can't change that. That happened, and so now I just have to learn from it, and that's kind of influenced my decision to lean more towards holistic, where I am not faced with the same level of side effects.
Mhm. And so do you, like, meditate and pray, like, every day?
Definitely pray every day. I try to meditate every day, but it's easy to get off track. So I always try to make an effort. But praying for sure, especially like with my allergies, I find I pray over my food a lot
Me
now.
too. Mhm.
Yeah, like just always blessing it, both like energetically, and then also praying before I eat. And in a weird way, I swear it helps lessen the allergic reactions.
Yeah. How do you like, what do you do, like, on a day if you have a lot of, like, symptoms pop up or you feel like you just can't get out of bed? Like, what do you do on those days?
At this point, I try to just rest. It took a while for me to get to that point to like accept that I can't do some things on certain days. And I would try to push, everybody says, oh, just be strong, push through it. It's just not healthy. If
Yeah.
your body is telling you that it can't function today at its, 100% level, then don't. Like, I just try to listen to my body now. And I only do as much as I feel it's willing to do, and then I just kind of ease off and everything will still be there tomorrow.
Yeah. And see, that's even holistic medicine. Like, sometimes it's literally just rest. There you
Yeah.
go, medicine. Eat a sandwich, medicine.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much quicker you recover when you actually let yourself truly rest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing, like, when spiritual people talk about being in alignment, like, you're exactly where you need to be and you feel good. A lot of times it starts with simple stuff like that, like just going to sleep. If you gotta pee, don't hold it.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
simple things like that that people are like, "Oh, I'll eat later," or, I get it. I have a feeling I need to call mom, but I'm not going to. Like, maybe mom was gonna make you feel better. It's like little things like that. Oh no, you froze. I hate when this happens. This keeps happening to me. I'm gonna give you a second and then it might be a sign to cut it off here. Mm, I'm thirsty. Another medicine, water. Even though most of our water is unfortunately kind of contaminated and poisoned, but can't blame a girl for trying. Actually, at one point, I am going to have a girl on who's going to talk about water and like how to have actual water. All right, girl, I'm taking this as a sign we're supposed to cut it off here. I'm so sorry, but also thank you so much for being here, Kiera, and thank you guys for watching. Definitely give her a follow. She is the most awesome. She's gonna have a lot more content coming for you. And honestly, whether you're chronically ill or not, she's super awesome, and her like fitness videos are really helpful if you just want to do some exercise that are a little bit easier. But definitely check her out. Love you guys.